Hey there farmers, welcome back to the channel. Today we're excited to introduce something new to make your experience even more enjoyable. Alongside our usual farming simulator adventures, we're bringing you Old Farmers' Tales, a collection of funny, mysterious and sometimes spooky stories from the countryside. These tales are perfect for setting the mood while we dive into the farming life. So sit back, relax and let the storytelling begin. Let us know in the comments if you enjoy this new edition. Happy farming! Nestled at the end of a dusty dirt road, just beyond the town of Hickory Hollow, sat a modest little farm. It wasn't the fanciest place you'd ever see. Just a red barn, a creaky farmhouse, and a field that stubbornly grew more rocks than corn. But to Farmer Hank, it was home. Hank was a man of few words and fewer smiles. Years of dealing with stubborn cows, misbehaving pigs, and a goose with far too much to say had left him weathered but patient. Well, mostly patient. Life on the farm was supposed to be simple, but somehow Hank always seemed to find himself knee-deep in chaos. And the animals? Let's just say they weren't your average farm animals. Between Marge, the opinionated cow, Percy, the dramatic pig, Henrietta, the scheming hen, and Gertrude, the gossiping goose, there was never a dull moment. Each day brought a new misadventure, and Hank had learned to roll with it. Story 1. Percy's Pig Catastrophe, Part 1, The Rumour. Percy the pig had always been a little dramatic. If a cloud covered the sun, Percy would call it a catastrophic weather event. You see, if his mud puddle got a bit dry, he'd wail, "It's a drought! I'll shrivel up like a raisin." But nothing could compare to the meltdown he had the morning he overheard Farmer Hank on the phone with the butcher. "Yes, I'm sending over one today. Should be ready for the barbecue this weekend," Hank said. Percy froze mid-snack. The juicy apple he was munching on fell to the ground as the words echoed in his head. "Barbecue!" Percy squealed, eyes wide. No, it can't be me. I'm too young, too tender, too delicious." He sprinted out of the barnyard, squealing loud enough to wake the neighbours. The other animals gathered around, puzzled. "Percy, what's your problem?" Gertrude the goose asked, waddling over. Percy paced in circles, sweating buckets. "Didn't you hear? Hank's sending one of us to the butcher, and it's for a barbecue. Who else could it be? I'm the plumpest, juiciest, tastiest one here." Marge the cow rolled her eyes. "Relax, Percy. He didn't say it was you." "But he didn't say it wasn't me either," Percy shouted. Henrietta the chicken clucked nervously. "Well, he does like bacon." That was all Percy needed to hear. "I've got to get out of here." Part 2. The Great Escape. That afternoon, Percy launched Operation Escape. First, he tried squeezing through the fence. But Percy, being a pig who never said no to a second helping, got stuck halfway. "Help, I'm too full of life," he cried. Dolores the sheep wandered over. "You mean full of snacks," she said, giving him a shove. Percy popped free and tumbled into a pile of hay. Plan B was digging a tunnel under the barn. Unfortunately, Percy's digging skills were about as good as his singing. Terrible. By the time he'd finished, the hole was 2 inches deep and he'd tired himself out. "Percy, what are you doing?" Hank's voice boomed from behind him. Percy jumped, covered in dirt. Gardening?" Hank raised an eyebrow, but walked away, muttering something about weird animals. Part 3. The Pig Chase. Finally, Percy decided he had only one option: run for the hills. At sunrise, he made his move. "I'll miss you all!" he cried dramatically as he bolted through the gate, left open by Hank, who was fixing the fence. "Tell my story to the next generation." Hank spotted him from the porch. "Oh, for Pete's sake, Percy, get back here!" But Percy was too fast. He dashed through the cornfield, zigzagged past the pond, and leapt over a log like a piggy Olympian. "You'll never take me alive!" Percy screamed as Hank chased him on foot. Gertrude, watching from the barn roof, honked with laughter. This is better than daytime TV. Part 4. The truth comes out. After an hour of running, Hank finally cornered Percy in the apple orchard. The farmer, out of breath, leaned against a tree. "Percy," he panted, "what on earth are you doing?" Percy threw himself on the ground dramatically. "I know it's me, Hank. I heard you on the phone. You're sending me to the butcher. Please have mercy. I'll eat fewer apples, I'll share the mud puddle, I'll even exercise. Just don't turn me into bacon." Hank stared at Percy for a long moment. Then he burst out laughing. "Bacon? You thought I was sending you to the butcher?" Hank wiped a tear from his eye. "Percy, I was talking about sending the old barbecue grill in the shed. It's busted, and I need a new one." Percy blinked. "The grill?" "Yes, the grill," Hank said, still chuckling. "What would I want with bacon? You're more trouble than you're worth, Percy." Percy sat up, relief washing over him. "Oh, well, that makes sense, I guess." Part 5. The aftermath. That evening, Percy strutted back into the barnyard like nothing had happened. "Good news, everyone. I've decided to stay. The farm just wouldn't be the same without me." Dolores rolled her eyes. "Glad you graced us with your presence." Gertrude honked. "You know, Percy, I recorded the whole chase on my tablet. I'm thinking of calling it The Fast and the Furry House." Percy snorted. "Laugh all you want, Gertrude. I'm a survivor." Hank shook his head from the porch, munching on a cheese puff. "That pig's got more drama than a soap opera." Moral of the story. Sometimes the drama we imagine is worse than reality. But if you're Percy the pig, the drama is reality. Story 2. The catastrophe of Marge. Part 1. The protest begins. Marge the cow was tired of waking up at dawn, tired of standing in the milking stall, and tired of having her personal space invaded every morning by cold metal machines. So, Marge decided it was time to make a stand, or more accurately, a sit. One chilly morning, just as the sun began to peek over the hills, Hank stumbled out to the barn with his steaming mug of coffee. He expected to see Marge in her usual spot, chewing cud and looking grumpy. Instead, he found a cardboard sign hanging around her neck that read, "No milking without talking. Negotiate or suffer the drought." Hank blinked, took a long sip of coffee and blinked again. "Marge, what in tarnation are you doing?" Marge huffed, turning her back on him. Gertrude the goose waddled over, ever the instigator. "She's on strike, Hank. In solidarity with, herself. We've decided to support her demands. No more milk unless you talk things over." Hank sighed. "And what exactly are these demands?" Marge swung around, eyes fiery with determination. "Warm hands, better hay, and a spa day twice a month." Hank nearly spat out his coffee. "A spa day? Marge, you're a cow." "Spa day or dry day," Marge declared, settling down stubbornly in the hay. Part 2. The Great Cow Uprising. Word of Marge's strike spread quickly. By midday, the barn was bustling with rebellious energy. Dolores the sheep, who had recently been caught faking a limp, offered to help make picket signs. Percy the pig snorted in solidarity, though he was mostly in it for the snacks being passed around. Even the chickens clucked about a solidarity egg strike, which meant they laid eggs and then hid them where Hank couldn't find them. Hank, meanwhile, was losing his patience. "Fine, Marge. You want a spa day? I'll get you the best mud puddle in the yard." Marge rolled her eyes. "We're talking eucalyptus leaves and classical music, Hank, not a mud hole with ducks in it." Part 3. Negotiation tactics. Hank decided he needed to outsmart Marge. That evening, he brought out a bucket of the sweetest clover he'd been saving for market day. "Look here, Marge," he said, setting it down in front of her. "A peace offering. Fresh clover just for you." Marge sniffed the air, tempted, but she steeled herself. "Clover's nice, Hank. But it ain't a massage chair, Hank groaned. A massage chair? Where would I even put it? In the barn, next to my stall, Marge said matter-of-factly. Gertrude honked from the rafters. And I want a feather conditioner for my feathers. They're looking dull. Hank threw his hat on the ground. First a spa day, now feather conditioner. What's next? A beauty salon for the sheep? Dolores perked up. That's not a bad idea, actually. Part 4, the compromise. The next morning, after a long night of dreaming up ridiculous demands and realising he couldn't afford a cow-sized massage chair, Hank came up with a compromise. All right, Marge, I can't promise you a spa day, but how about this? I'll warm my hands before milking, swap your hay out for the fresh stuff, and, he paused, grumbling, you can listen to some of that fancy music from my truck radio. Deal? Marge considered this. And a salt lick shaped like a palm tree. Hank raised an eyebrow. Fine, but it's coming out of your Christmas gift budget. Marge grinned. Deal. The strike ended, the milk flowed again, and the farm returned to its usual semi-chaotic peace. Gertrude put in a request for a radio talk show, which Hank promptly ignored, and Percy wrote a heartfelt poem about the power of standing up for what you believe in, which nobody read. Moral of the story: sometimes standing your ground, or sitting, in Marge's case, can lead to unexpected rewards, or at least a warm-handed farmer. Story 3, The Tractor Trouble, Part 1, a new edition. It was a bright and sunny day when Farmer Hank pulled into the barnyard with his latest purchase, a shiny new tractor with all the bells and whistles. The old one, a rusted, barely functional relic from the 1960s, had finally kicked the bucket after years of sputtering protests. This here's going to make life a whole lot easier, Hank said proudly, patting the sleek red machine. It's got GPS, auto steering, and even a heated seat. Gertrude the goose waddled over and squinted at it. Fancy, but can it gossip? Hank rolled his eyes. It doesn't need to gossip. It just needs to work. The animals gathered around, eyeing the futuristic tractor like it was an alien spaceship. Percy the pig poked it with his snout. Looks expensive. I give it 2 weeks before you break it, Hank. Oh, ye of little faith, Hank muttered, climbing into the driver's seat. Part 2, Operator Malfunction. The trouble began almost immediately. Hank, not exactly the most tech-savvy farmer, couldn't figure out how to start the tractor. All right, where's the key? He grumbled, poking random buttons. Gertrude honked from the fence. It's 2025, Hank. It probably doesn't have a key. Try talking to it. Say, start, please. Hank glared at her. It's a tractor, not one of your smart gadgets. After several minutes of trial and error, and accidentally activating the windshield wipers, the headlights, and a button that made the tractor play country techno, Hank finally got the engine to roar to life. See? Easy as pie, he declared. But as soon as he shifted into gear, the tractor lunged forward with a terrifying jolt, ploughing through the chicken coop fence and sending Henrietta and her friends squawking in every direction. Stop! Hank yelled, slamming random buttons again. Instead of stopping, the tractor honked its horn and started reversing, straight toward the haystack. Part 3, the animals take over. By the time Hank managed to stop the tractor, thanks to Gertrude reading the manual aloud from the roof of the barnyard looked like a war zone. The chicken coop was in shambles, the haystack was flattened, and Percy's mud puddle had been thoroughly churned into soup. Great job, Hank, Percy said sarcastically, dripping with mud. What's next? Turning the pond into a parking lot? Hank groaned. All right, fine. I admit it. I might need some help figuring this thing out. Help? Gertrude honked. You should hand over the keys and let the real brains of this operation take charge. The goose? Hank asked, incredulous. No, me, Percy said, waddling forward. I've played farm simulator games. I know how this works. Part 4, the test drive. Against his better judgment, Hank let Percy climb into the driver's seat. All right, Percy, you think you can do better? Prove it. Percy adjusted an imaginary hat and cracked his hooves. Watch and learn. He pressed a button labelled Auto Drive, and the tractor began moving smoothly through the fields, ploughing a perfect row. The animals cheered, and even Hank looked impressed. "Well, I'll be," he said. Maybe this thing was worth the money. But Percy, emboldened by his success, decided to take things up a notch. "Let's see what this button does," he said, pressing a large green icon on the touchscreen. The tractor immediately shifted into turbo mode, speeding off like a race car. Percy screamed, clutching the steering wheel as the tractor barreled through the fields, knocking over a scarecrow, a bucket of paint, and Hank's favourite lawn chair. "Help! This thing has a mind of its own," Percy wailed. Part 5, the aftermath. After chasing the runaway tractor for half a mile, Hank finally managed to cut it off by leaping onto the hood and yanking the emergency brake. The tractor sputtered to a halt, smoke pouring from its exhaust. Percy tumbled out of the driver's seat, dazed and covered in hay. "Okay," he panted. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this." Hank glared at him. "You think?" The animals surveyed the damage. Tyre tracks zigzagging across the fields, a paint-splattered scarecrow, and the remains of Hank's lawn chair sticking out of the pond. Gertrude honked, barely containing her laughter. "Well, Hank, looks like you've got a lot of faith to rebuild in your tractor." Hank sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "This thing's supposed to make life easier, not turn it into a demolition derby." Percy waddled over sheepishly. "For what it's worth, Hank, I think you're better off with the old tractor." Hank stared at the shiny, dented machine and muttered, "I'm starting to think you're right." Moral of the story: sometimes the old ways work just fine, and not every problem can be solved with technology, especially if Percy's involved.